This is the April 28th meeting of the Select Board of Concord at 6 p.m. I'm Mark Howell. I'll be chairing tonight as Mary Hartman is away, and Wendy Ravelli has graciously agreed to be our clerk pro tem. You want to take the role?
Take a roll call.
Yeah.
Okay. Cameron.
Here.
Mark Howell.
Here.
Terry.
Here.
Wendy Ravelli here. We know that Mary is out.
Yes. So before we begin tonight, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible tragedy that our community experienced a week ago today. And as our high school reconvened today, we want to thank the teachers, the administrators, and the many others that are providing support to the students and families. To all who are feeling this loss, we offer our comfort and support. Let's pause for a moment of silence and reflection. Thank you. So we'll begin with public comment as we always do. Comments are up to 3 minutes. Please begin with your name and approach the podium so everyone following along on Zoom can see and hear you. Do we have any public comments?
Diane Proctor has her hand up.
Okay. Diane, let's see if we can hear you.
Thank you. I my video thing is not working. I have Andrew Fontaine's screen for the select board agenda. So I'm having a little hard time seeing everything. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for all that our town has faced recently. Now we're in good shape. And I also just want to say that the April 19th was brilliant. And I'm so grateful for everybody's participation and contributions in it. Because our town really did itself proud, and I'm just so proud of us and everything that happened. I would like to speak for a moment for the league with April 19th now in the rearview window or the rearview mirror. We are going to have 4 warrant reviews for articles, and the difference between these and town meeting is that there's longer time periods for the various warrant presenters to talk and speak about their particular article, and then ample time for questions and answers that may follow. This coming Friday from 10 to 12, there will be a focus on citizen petitions. And we have 3 of the 5 citizen petitioners signed up to come, and we presume the other 2 will eventually join us. And we will look at those 5 citizen petitions on Friday morning in the library from 10 to 12. Those sessions will be videoed for people who are working and can't watch them, and they'll be able to watch them afterwards. And so we welcome a broad audience. On the 14th of May, we'll be focusing specifically on planning board warrant articles. Again, focusing on those articles that are particularly complicated or maybe even controversial. On the 16th, we will be looking at the select board articles that you all are sponsoring and give opportunities for people to hear about those and discuss them. And then on the 21st of May, the 4th of those reviews, we will be hearing from the school committee and the town to some degree, and then the roads. And Alan Cathcart will be joining us then. So I will repeat those dates this Friday, May 2nd, from 10 to 12. The 14th of May from 10 to 12, again in the Goodwin Forum. On Friday, the 16th, 10 to 12. And then on Wednesday, May 21st, 10 to 12. All are welcome. These will be videoed and available to the public. Thank you very much for letting me announce this.
And thanks to the league for sponsoring those events. Gary.
Gary Clayton, 31 First Lane. I am co-chair of the Concord 250 Executive Committee, and on behalf of my colleague and co-chair, Rob Monroe, and the entire Concord 250 Executive Committee, we want to say in this public forum, thank you to the town of Concord for all of your support, help the efforts that led to, I think, was a very successful day on April 19th. It happened because of an extraordinary commitment on the part of a lot of people. We had hundreds of volunteers involved, many, many town departments. We worked closely with our colleagues in the other Battle Road communities, worked closely with the National Park Service, U.S. Army, National Guard. But I particularly want to do a shout out for the town employees who committed extraordinary effort on this particular endeavor. And I think I can safely say virtually every town department, either directly or indirectly, was very much involved. And I hope we all understand as residents of this community that these individual employees have other jobs to do for us, and they kept a lot of balls in the air. But I'm very, very grateful for the contribution and the effort that the town staff made.
The bottom button, hold it, and each turn.
Can you try it? Sorry.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Just the message.
Should I repeat any of that, or was it picked up?
I think it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So to conclude, again, I want to thank this board for your support over the last 3 years in getting to this point. And again, especially acknowledge the role of the town staff in helping make this a successful day and event. Honestly, without the town staff, we could not have done this. So thank you again for the support.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Do we have any other public comments? If you're online and you want to make a comment, please raise your hand. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Do I?
No, do I see a note that we're gonna postpone the ARPA update?
Yes, could I just
Yeah.
Sure.
make a brief comment about that? So we will have the report available this Friday, and we can distribute it and then put it on the consent calendar for the next meeting.
Okay.
But there was some additional work that was needed to be done in order to comply or to prepare the third quarter report, so it's just not quite ready yet. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great. All right, with that, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda with postponement of the ARPA report to a future date.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Thank you. Select board nominations.
All right, so I move that we nominate Walter Clay of 675 Sudbury Road to the Historic District Commission as a full member for a term to expire January 1st, 2030. Any second?
Second. Oh, we don't have to do that on nominations, right?
Well, we're moving. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, second. I thought we just did that on
Sometimes they're
appointments.
in the consent agenda.
Yeah, sometimes,
So
but this
that's-
one's pulled
I
out
think-
separately, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes the nominations are in the consent agenda, and then the approvals are like a separate
Yeah,
thing.
the appointments
Okay.
are
Yeah.
separate.
Since this is called out separately, we probably should vote.
All right,
Yeah.
second.
It wasn't part of the consent agenda.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so-
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
And appointments and reappointments.
All right, so I'm going to move to appoint Dorothy Ortner of 169 Thoreau Street, number 4, as the Town of Concord representative to the Minuteman Vocational Technical School District for a term from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028.
Second.
And this was previously not. She was
So I had
previously nominated because I wasn't.
she was not previously nominated.
Okay.
So what I didn't understand is,
Yeah.
this is the Minuteman Vocational Tech Committee, so it's not a town committee. So I don't know if we handle this
We-
differently somehow.
I
Because
don't
we
know,
didn't
but
do a
it is.
nomination.
Right, 'cause we
it
didn't
is
do a
It's just-
nomination.
Right,
No.
correct.
That's
So if we want to change it to a nomination, and do it next week, that's fine, or we can
Anytime.
return, either way.
All right, so I can, well,
We
would you
could-
rather
we-
we just nominate? That
We can
makes
make
sense.
a nomination and then do an
Correct.
appointment.
Yeah, so I
next
think we
time.
should do it as a
Right.
All right, so
nomination.
I'm going to vote to nominate Dorothy Ortner of 169 Thoreau Street, number 4, as the town of Concord representative to the Minuteman Vocational Technical School District for a term from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028.
Second,
Great. And I'll just note that Dee, as most people know her by, is actually a member of the Finance Committee
But rolling
at
off.
the moment,
Yep.
but her term ends on May 31st.
Okay, so
And
yeah,
so
so
she
she's
has
not an
gone,
exception.
she's not an exception, but,
Goes in July.
you know, if somebody were to check this minute, they would
Right,
find
but
that
there
she
would
is a
be
member of
an
the
overlap.
committee. Yeah.
Yep.
And, great. Any
Okay, so sorry, we need to vote it. Somebody seconded.
Yeah, this was the
Discussion.
discussion.
Oh, gotcha.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. Liz? Got you 4 minutes early.
Very good. Hi, I'm Liz Rust. I'm the Director of the Regional Housing Services Office, and I live at 201 Commonwealth Avenue. And I'm here to talk about a specific item of the Select Board in the town accepting affordable housing restrictions on a property of 406 Old Marlborough Road. And that's a very discrete item, but it's part of the larger Assabet River Homes project that's been going on for some number of years. You might recall that in 2022, it came before town meeting. It was a large piece of property, 7 acres, that was offered, the private developers were offering that, and the town purchased 6 acres for open space, which I think you're going to hear about just coming right up. And the CHDC bought 1 acre for 5 units of housing. And those 5 units are composed of 3 new construction homes that Habitat is going to build, and a duplex that has 2 one-bedroom apartments that will be owned by the Concord Housing Authority. And those are 2 different parts of the housing project, and they are regulated by 2 different programs, and they have 2 different sets of regulatory documents. So the Housing Authority 2 units are, it's what we call a local restriction here, where the town would accept the restriction and approve that. It's approved by the state so that it's in perpetuity, and so that is the first action. Want me just to go through all the different actions? You have 3 or 4 actions
Yeah, why
here.
don't we do the overview?
Sure. How the transaction is occurring, it's 1 piece of property now, and it has this 406 Old Marlborough Road, and the restriction would put a restriction on that property. Coming up at the closing, which is planned for in May, the property will be put into a condominium with 4 different condominium units. At that point, the restriction needs to be amended to not restrict the entire property, but just the 406 Old Marlborough Road, which has now been just 1 unit of condominium. So also in your packet is an amendment to the restriction for that purpose.
but this is the
Exactly.
part where I'm confused.
Exactly.
Okay. There are 4 condominiums, units, right?
4 condominium units and 5 housing units. So 2 housing units are in the 406 Old Marlborough Road, which is 1 condominium unit.
Right. And then there are 3 more condominium units.
And those are the vacant units that Habitat will build, and those will be restricted under the LIP program that you're
Right.
very familiar with. And that will come down the line. That's not here presented for you right
So
now.
there's 5 units altogether.
Correct.
One's a duplex rental, and the other 3 are going to be built in the LIP program with Habitat.
Right, and those will be ownership units.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And when the condominium occurs, the restriction needs to be changed to be on the whole parcel to just the condominium unit. So it's really the property underneath the restriction that's changing, nothing about the restriction itself, except for what property, because it's a restriction on the land. So the land is changing from the entire 1 acre parcel to this 1 unit of 406 Old Marlborough Road.
Okay.
So that's the actions, and those actions are voted by the select board, and you sign that, and then the town manager accepts the restriction based on that vote of the board. And those are the materials that are put for you.
So we're approving the amendment tonight, even though technically it doesn't become effective until the property.
Becomes a
Transaction.
condominium, yes.
Right, okay.
And we're planning for that in May.
Yep, yeah, no, I heard you
So
say
it's
that. I
coming
just-
right up, so we
but
don't
We're
have to-
doing it in advance, right?
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly,
that's-
exactly.
And I see that the CHA address is listed as 78 Forest Ridge.
So I'll talk about that one. So
Oh,
that's
oh,
the next one.
wait.
That was the
Okay.
406. So
Yes.
as we
Yeah.
were doing the project, we modeled the restriction and this program on the CHA unit that they bought with trust funds back in the beginning of, this would be January 2024. And they had a restriction similar to this. And we realized that in that process, the select board had never voted it nor accepted it.
Oh, that's
So this
diff-
is,
okay.
so it's just
Retro.
kind of a retroactive piece
Oh,
right here.
okay, that's something different, okay,
Yeah,
great.
so that's why they're coming together. They were going to come earlier, but we're like, why don't we just
Oh,
come
okay.
together because it's
Yeah.
all related and.
Oh, good, that makes much more sense. I was trying to figure out why this one had
Yeah,
the
what it
70.
had to do,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
okay.
Okay.
So
I think-
I'm glad to answer any questions about the larger project. It's pretty complex, and we thank all the town and the Concord Affordable Housing Trust and the CHA, and we have lawyers helping us, and the closing package and the materials are quite substantial. But the action item for you is very small today.
Are the existing units currently occupied?
One of them is, and the other one, a tenant is moving in May 1st.
Okay.
And through this project and through CPA funds, the units have been renovated and capital improvements done so that they won't need any capital need for 10 years as per the requirements.
So sorry, the request is to vote on all three things tonight, looking at the packet?
Mhm.
Yes?
I thought there were four, maybe four. 2 votes and 2 acceptances. Or I guess that you just you just do the votes. Yes.
Right.
4 things to be signed.
So we're gonna vote.
I know, sorry, just for my context,
Sure.
I always like to compare it. Is this a thing that, so this type of property with these 2 different types of units with different types of restrictions on it, is this a, hey, this has never happened before and this is unusual, or this is a, hey, this is something that it's been done in many places and, you know, it kind of works when we separate it this way? I'm just,
Well, it is a little unique, and it certainly has added to the complexity of the project. It's been done before. It's really 2 separate pieces coming together. I think that when you would look at other housing projects, you wouldn't necessarily see one person coming forward with both the ownership and the rental. Usually those are going to be 2 separate, different parts of different developers or different projects on one piece of property. But this is
one piece of property with
Yeah.
just this, these units will have this restriction, these units will have this restriction. It's
So the
not so much.
housing authority restriction is part of a program that they're developing, and they'll have more and more units like they did at Forest Ridge under this particular program. And then the ownership units have a standard for the state. So both of those are standard in terms of their restrictions and programmatic requirements, but putting them together in one project is not, hasn't really been done before. But each one has its own precedents and standards.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, as I recall, the rental units are from an existing structure that was on the property when we
Correct.
acquired it.
Correct.
And so they were renovated to become rental units. And then, you know, on a separate track, the additional property was used to construct the ownership units, or which will be constructed.
Right, and so in terms of that project, the first piece is always the clearing of the land.
Yeah.
So that's when everyone says, oh, there's a project happening, right? So
Yeah.
that might be happening this week or early
Okay.
next week. So you might see more of that. It's a very prominent piece of property there. Right? Real true.
So I can make a motion to accept all of these at once. Is that fair? Or do we need to?
Let's do them separate, because it's so complicated.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so I'm gonna move to approve the recording of affordable housing restriction for 406 Old Marlborough Road.
Second.
Second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And then I'm going to move to approve the recording of affordable housing I'm going to move to approve the amendment to the restriction as noted in the April 25th, 25 memo from Liz Russ to the 406.
We can't quite hear Wendy. I think for some reason your microphone is
You know
not
what? Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah, it's just my.
much better.
Okay, great. So let me do that again. I'm gonna move to approve the amendment to the restriction on 406 Old Marlborough Road as noted in Liz Russ's memo dated 4/25/25.
Wait a second.
Liz, can you just go over again what the amendment
I'm a
is?
little confused what the amendment is.
Yeah, this is like,
It's the, I'll let you.
Okay, why don't we get a second and then we'll.
all right,
answer the
second,
question.
right.
Thank you. Okay, just,
Discussion.
So
So we
the
don't miss that.
amendment changes the property underneath the restriction. So if you want to look at the language of the
Memo?
amendment, let me just find that here.
okay, so I have this memo, April 24th
Yeah, so it's described in here, the background,
in the background.
affordable housing restriction.
Yeah, which section is it in, this amendment?
So, it's in the packet.
Oh, it's so in the memo,
Oh,
the
sorry.
second paragraph from the bottom, it's on, oh my God,
Right.
what page are we on?
Yeah, I see it.
So the last
So
sentence in
I can just read that for you. The affordable housing restrictions presented restricts the entire 1 acre parcel as it exists now. The plan is to record this restriction prior to the closing, and subsequently after the closing, when the parcel becomes these 4 condominium units, the restriction needs to be amendment to restrict only the 406 Old Marlborough Road unit, because it will only be 1 condominium unit, and that
Okay, I could continue if everyone can hear me on the Zoom.
Liz, you're coming through beautifully here, so.
okay, great.
Okay. So the affordable housing restriction presented here is on the entire 1 acre parcel as it exists today. And the plan is to record that restriction at the closing. And then in the process of the closing, that property is going to then become 4 different units. And the property legal description is Exhibit A in all of the restrictions. So Exhibit A describes the property from its legal standpoint. So basically what has to happen is the legal description of the restriction needs to change from the entire property to just the unit
There we go.
But
of-
the mic's still on.
The mic is still on. Okay, I'm just going to keep talking.
Just go.
Okay. So to change from it's really the Exhibit A is changing in the main restriction. It was the whole 1 acre to in the amendment. It's just going to be that 1 unit that is 406.
Okay.
All the terms of the restriction and the perpetuity and the state approval is all the same.
That's the part I don't understand. Why is only that 1 unit going to be under the restriction?
Because that unit remains owned by the Concord Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
the other 3 units become ownership units by
Right,
whoever. they're
But
sold
they
to.
still have affordable housing restriction, right?
Not yet. You'll see those coming up in the summer. We're working on the LIP application with Habitat,
Got it.
and that will be a whole separate path in the regular LIP
That's
application
right.
process.
Okay, now I remember. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And that's what I mean by the 2 separate programs. They have 2 different restrictions and 2 different processes.
Okay.
But one of the conditions for the housing authority would not purchase the property unless it was already restricted.
Okay.
So that's why we have to do the restriction first, even though we're going to change it 2 weeks later, but just to make sure that it's properly restricted, then they will accept the property and then the restriction will be amended.
And both programs will continue into perpetuity?
Correct.
Okay. great.
Correct. I think that's there. The state certifies that the restriction is acceptable to them in perpetuity. And they're reviewing it now. And I got feedback today that it meets all their requirements and they're finishing up their paperwork.
Thank you.
Good.
Right, so there was a motion, we had some good discussion.
Mhm.
And I seconded it, and
Do you want to repeat what it is? Just because people may have lost track.
Okay, so I moved that we approved the amendment to the restriction as noted in Liz Russ memo from 4/25/25, and it was related to 406 Old Marlborough Road.
Okay. And we had a second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, one
Thank you.
more.
One more.
Okay, I'm going to move to approve the affordable housing restriction at 78 Forest Ridge by the Concord Housing Authority.
Second.
Thank you.
And this is a restriction that already exists. We just hadn't approved it.
Correct. Correct.
It's not changing.
Correct.
It's a retro approval.
So the acceptance, you will vote, Carrie will acceptance, that acceptance will be recorded as a standalone document.
Good. Anything else?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Liz.
Thank you, Russ. Yes.
Okay, Delia, because we're not quite done with the Aspet River Bluff yet.
Good evening, Delia Kay, Natural Resources Director for the town. Can you
That
hear
one
me?
might not be working. You
Watch
might
out.
have-
I
Well,
think
is the
that's
light on?
fine. No,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The mic is working or?
Nope.
No.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Unhelpfully, it does.
Yes.
So it is a little coincidental that we're here tonight with both the housing piece and the land piece. Do you have a PowerPoint to project for me? It was a real pleasure working with Liz and representatives from the Housing Development Corporation, the Concord Land Conservation Trust, and Sudbury Valley trustees to acquire this parcel in 2022 from the Di Giovanni family. As Liz mentioned, it was approved in 2022 town meeting. 7-acre parcel was the original parcel. And it is, it has frontage on the Assabet River, about 800 feet of frontage on the Assabet. It is accessible by the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. There's a map, but it doesn't, it's not critical. I think most people probably know where this parcel is, right in the heart of West Concord. And so 7 acres was acquired, and then this is a map showing the location of the Assabet River Bluff Conservation Land, which is outlined in yellow. It's conservation land across the Assabet, and West Concord Village is just above the top of the map, and to the right is a conservation restriction. And you can see the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail swings right along the side of that. If you go to the next slide. So this is in green, that is the conservation parcel, and in yellow, that was the 1 acre that was carved off, and below the yellow parcel is 406 Old Bedford Road. And there are trails on the conservation land currently. You can see there's a trail on the housing parcel, which will be, it's no longer there, and we'll be rerouting those trails. So as part of the funding acquisition, so the land was purchased, and the fee interest is held by the town through the Natural Resources Commission. And as a requirement of Community Preservation Act funds and a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that was obtained by the town, and also to recognize the significant contributions of CLCT and SVT in their fundraising efforts, there will be a conservation restriction placed over the parcel. And that's a real belt and suspenders approach to protecting conservation land. And the values of this conservation land and the conservation restriction is retaining public access over the parcel. It has biodiversity, preservation, water quality, archaeological resources. It supports climate resilience and helps preserve scenic views. And so the NRC at their April 23rd meeting voted unanimously to grant the conservation to Sudbury Valley trustees and CLCT jointly, and to request approval of the select board. Select board has to approve every conservation restriction, and then it will go to the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for signature by the secretary, and then recorded, and it will then be a perpetual restriction.
It's a fun piece of property to walk over.
It is. It's a remarkable property, and one of the really nice things about it is it's so flat that we're thinking about it for an all-persons trail.
Yeah.
So that's something that we will be pursuing later in the year.
Yeah, it's amazing how close to the river it is, though.
Yeah.
It's a great piece of property. I was curious. Does Sudbury, the Sudbury Valley trustees were doing fundraising? to
And
support the
CLCT.
purchase? And CLTC. I didn't realize that they were involved in this project, so
Yes.
it's great.
Yes. So Krista Collins from SVT and Polly Reeve from the Land Trust were the primary, but both boards were and organizations were involved in the fundraising, and substantial amount of money was raised through fundraising.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like this is something that was already approved at the town meeting. This is executing
The
what we
restriction.
need to in order to implement the restriction.
Yes.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Are we ready for a motion?
I think so.
Okay, I move that we approve the conservation restriction over the 6-acre Assabet River Bluff parcel at 2B Upland Road.
Second.
Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you, Delia. Thank you, Liz. Okay. Megan, this is our lease agreement.
Yes, good evening. So in your packet this evening, you have a lease agreement that's been signed by Wireless Edge Towers for the installation and operation of telecommunications tower at 755 Walden Street in Concord. This agreement stems from a citizen's petition from the 2024 annual town meeting that directed the town to pursue the issuance of a request for proposals for a cell tower at this location. So in response, the town issued an RFP and we had a competitive procurement process, and Wireless Edge Towers was selected as the preferred vendor. We've been working with a number of stakeholders and technical experts to confirm the language in this lease agreement. We've worked with town council, we've worked with our RF consultant, our emergency communications coordinator, public works staff who use the site for a number of different uses. And so we have before you this lease. And I just wanted to also note, of course, we know cell service is a main priority for the community. It's been identified as a select board goal. And this project ties into that goal by working towards, not solving cell service across the community yet, but, step by step, we're partnering with a vendor who can bring additional carriers to improve coverage in this critical part of town. I also have the president of Wireless Edge, John Arthur, on the line. He's worked with communities all across New England and probably beyond if you have any specific questions for him.
I guess, the one question I have, which is sort of how do we now, we built the tower, and then how do we solicit use of that tower? How does that?
Sure. So Wireless Edge will build the tower and they will handle all the subleasing to the carriers. And so I can kind of summarize this, and then John, if you want to chime in, but he has communicated to me that there has been already some interest in carriers at the site, and more than one carrier, there's been interest because we did the request for proposals, so people know about the site. And so that's been a benefit to Wireless Edge as they're starting to really signing the lease is the first step. But after that, they'll be working on the subleases. But I believe they've been starting to discuss this opportunity with carriers. so that they can, kind of plan out
So,
the structure.
so pardon my ignorance, but once you build this and you say that there's carriers, how many carriers can be on the tower?
Yeah,
Up
good
to
question.
5.
Well, it depends on how tall it's going to be. There's still this, our zoning doesn't allow for anything over 150 feet. And so kind of making sure that the space is sufficient. But John, do you have, are you able to chime in here? I think you're on the call.
Yes, hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Well, good evening, folks. Again, John Arthur with Wireless Edge. So I could tell you at this point that we do have interest from both AT&T and Verizon. So they have submitted to us their preliminary applications, so we understand what their equipment is, and that's really the first step in moving forward with the wireless carrier. So once this agreement is concluded, we'll be moving forward with the subleasing, deals with each carrier. So that's really good news that you can start off with both AT&T and Verizon on the site. As far as what the capacity of other carriers in the market, the site is designed for up to 5 major carriers, plus public safety, the town's equipment, for example. And so there are 4 real major carriers in the market. In addition to AT&T, you have T-Mobile, and you have a Dish network, which are now operating under Boost. And the tower will accommodate all four of those carriers, plus one potential future.
Great.
And generally speaking, if you have AT&T and Verizon on a site, T-Mobile is going to want to be there as well. Particularly in this area where there's really kind of a lack of infrastructure, this is going to be a critical site for the carriers, and this will fill a significant gap.
Yep. Great. And what kind of timeline does it take to get the tower up, do we think, and then to recruit these or subcontract with some of these vendors?
John, could you speak to the timeline? I know step 1 is the lease, and then there's a number of permitting requirements. Could you talk about what you're seeing over the next year or year and a half, I think?
Sure. So a good rule with tower building is it takes about 9 months. So we're hoping that once we get the carriers, we'll need the carriers' information to get us through the planning stage. We're hoping to be able to make applications to the town this summer. That will take several months to get through that process, and then you'll have the actual design of the tower itself and the foundation, and the building permit process. There's also a parallel process, which is the NEPA process. That takes about 5 months by itself. So that's why we like to say it's about a 9-month process. Once we have our permits or we're about to get our building permits, we can order the steel for the tower. Fabrication times run about 2 to 2.5 months. Building the site is probably the easiest part of the whole process. Once we start construction, the tower is generally up in about a month, allowing time for concrete cure and all that.
Great. Thank you.
What can the town do? What can we do to help that go smoothly, to make sure it goes as quickly as possible?
Well, I appreciate that question. I would say we definitely want to work with you closely on your public safety use of the tower. We want to get that going and get the information for that as soon as possible. So if you have consultants and they can identify what's going to go on the tower, that won't stop us in the process, but it's good to know. So when we build a tower, we can incorporate your equipment. And then really at this point, once this lease is concluded, it's really up to us to move forward as quickly as possible with the engineering. I would allow about 2 months from now to get a complete application in front of you. And then certainly the town's support in that process is going to be critical.
So I wanted to ask a little bit more, and this is probably really a question for the public safety side, but I know we have a multiple system already with that, and I think with the high school, to the primary transmitter. So is this site expected to be actively used by the public safety system? Or I see this as an opportunity for us?
Mark, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I had muted earlier. I apologize. My question was if our public safety team feels like this is a site that they need, and are they planning to add it to the existing antenna arrays that they have?
At this time, it is not part of the immediate plan, but we have been in touch with our consultants and our communications team to identify what we may need in the future. But it is not part of our current plans. As you mentioned, the high school is
the current
plan
backup.
that we're, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I have a question about the length of the lease. It's 10 years, I think. Is that the maximum that we're allowed to do right now?
I'm glad you asked. Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yes. If you recall, we have an article for town meeting, so this is closely related. And I didn't call it out so specifically in this memo. I could have, but I'm glad you brought it up. We currently, the select board and the town manager, with the select board approval, can sign a lease for 10 years. But as we have discussed a few times, the requirement for investing in capital
Right.
can require longer term. So the way the lease is written, it went back and forth with our council and the Wireless Edge Council, and it's written in a way to say that the extensions per what the town bylaws allow. And so this town meeting article that you all are sponsoring is allowing for up to 30 years for leases. So
Right. So what I'm trying to figure out is if we agree to this lease now, and then in June the town meeting passes the 30 years, how would this be amended, or what happens?
this wouldn't be amended, so the term is 10 years, and then it has renewals for up to 3 5-year terms, which is 25 years, and that's how it was put out for procurement for 25 years. And at some point, we would go back to probably to make a. Actually, I don't think we would need to change this lease agreement. I think this is This would be allowed per the additional 5-year terms would be allowed per local bylaw. And so, if the local bylaw is adjusted for a longer term commitment, then this would be sufficient.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, do we have a sense of the coverage as far as what this where this tower will sort of pick up?
Yes. I don't know, John, if you have any we've done some analysis here, and there'd be improvements at the high school. There'd be improvements along Route 2. I don't know. I think it depends on a few different factors. And John, if you have any additions to what we could expect in terms of coverage.
Yeah, I actually received some coverage plots from both AT&T and Verizon. I'm just seeing if I can pull one up now. If I can get to it quick, I can share it on the screen, and that will give you a pretty good idea. And just give me a minute for it to come up. All right, so if I can share my screen. And let me know if that comes through.
Yep.
You guys are seeing that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the site is represented by the yellow dot in the middle. This one happens to be AT&T, and this is their existing coverage. So let me just flip back and forth. Okay, so this is their existing coverage. So what you see here is there's other sites located at the green dots. And you see there's one might be a mile and a half away to the east, another one along the highway, and then one way to the west. So again, I usually like them to show white for no coverage, but the light blue areas, like if you see my pointer, the light blue areas are areas where effectively there's really no reliable coverage. And when you get closer to the green area, so if you take a look around this site over here where my pointer is, the green area, now this is 700 megahertz. This is basic cellular type coverage. So the green area right around the site is where you expect it to be the best coverage. And if you look at the chart at the bottom, it says negative 85, which the lower the number, the better. So negative 85 is better coverage than negative 126. Negative 126 is virtually nothing. And then the purple area is like the next level around there. Then you get to the yellow, the orange. By the time you get to the negative 126, you don't have any coverage. So if you switch over to the next map, you'll see what the site added. It's quite a large area. And it's actually a larger area than the other two sites. I would say even the third site where my pointer is, coverage area with real good quality coverage. So the green again is very good quality coverage. That's LTE. You could, stream Netflix on your phone, that type of level of quality. And then the purple around it, again, that's slightly less coverage, but that's something that road coverage in vehicle, you've got good quality coverage. So this site will really perform and fill that gap pretty well. I don't
That's
know if I can
promising.
get a hold of Verizon, but are there any questions on that?
And each carrier will be different, right? So
Yeah.
Each carrier will be different, but it's kind of the way the terrain is in this area. There's not going to be a lot of difference between, let's say, the first couple of carriers on the pole, and it's really going to be about where they're pointing their antennas. But I would expect that all the carriers have the same existing sites, and therefore they're going to be pointing their antennas in roughly the same direction. So it's not going to be that much different. If I can find Verizon spots, I'll see if I can put them up.
Megan, do you have copies of these maps?
no, but I'll get them.
Well, it's nice to see the opportunity for some actual progress on the cell phone. So while John looks for that, because I think we'd all be interested in seeing it, if there aren't any other questions, we could entertain our motions.
Are there any questions from the audience? No? Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the lease agreement with Wireless Edge for the telecommunications tower and facilities.
Second.
Any additional comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Thank you, folks. So the Verizon sent me their emails, and their bots embedded in email, so it's going to be really difficult to put up. But I can send them along to. I'll get them in a separate file and send them along to Megan so that they can distribute to you guys.
it looks like it'll make a dramatic improvement, especially in the immediate area.
Oh, definitely. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you, John.
Let us know how we can make it happen.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good evening, folks.
Okay. All right. The next item is discussion about Peabody operating costs and property use.
Okay, thank you. At your last meeting, I mentioned to you that at one of the town meeting public hearings, we presented this article to the Finance Committee. And while the Finance Committee recommended favorable action on the article, there was some discussion and the vote was split. Again, I mentioned this at the last meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda. So we wanted to put it on the agenda just to talk about it again to see, or I guess to confirm that the select board is interested in moving forward with this article in this manner. So I know you are familiar with what we've been doing over time. The property, the school committee has voted to transfer or to surplus the property. That means there's an opportunity for the select board to take care, custody, and control of the property and to have it available for reuse for a variety of activities, or to further dispose of the property and put it up for sale. The select board has, or is in the process of seating a land use working group that will be looking at a number of municipal properties to determine, I guess, highest and best use, future use or future reuse, including the Peabody School. That group will be working over the period of 12 plus months. During this time, we're not sure what the outcome will be or the final determination for the Peabody School will be. And so there are certain carrying costs for this building. Regardless of whether or not it is used, there are carrying costs. There's an insurance cost, some level of utility costs, again, regardless of whether the property is used or not. And when we talked about putting this article together, I think we agreed that it made sense to keep these segregated so they don't get included as part of the town budget, because we wouldn't expect these costs to be ongoing. If the town were to take ownership and use it, we would be programming these costs within our regular budget. But during this interim period, we wanted to keep these costs separate. So we did take one additional look at the costs, and we've updated them slightly. The big cost for the facility, if it's not occupied, is the insurance cost, and the big cost, if it is occupied, are the utility costs. So we would not expect to fully use the property because, as I've mentioned to you before, the elevator, for instance, is not operational. And so there are limitations to use of the second floor of the building unless we were to fix the elevator. So we have made an adjustment. We've reduced the request to $82,592. I think you can round that to $85,000. Mm-hmm. And I did identify that, about $21,000 of this, the insurance cost, if it was part of the town budget, it would be considered as outside of guidelines, as all insurance costs are. So again, the Finance Committee had some feedback about the use of free cash to fund this article. I have proposed that an alternative would be to reappropriate surplus parking meter funds. This, from my view, is not really significantly different than appropriating free cash, because this surplus of parking meter funds will become part of free cash at the end of this fiscal year, assuming it's released through town meeting action. But it is money that is not currently part of free cash, and perhaps that is a more acceptable way to fund this. I know the Finance Committee was interested in additional or alternative revenue sources. I know the rec department has some level of interest in the building. We haven't really talked to the rec commission about that. I think we can do that, and there's a potential that some of these costs, if they can use the space, could be borne by the rec revolving fund through fees. But we just haven't advanced that conversation very far.
No.
I have a couple of questions. There was some talk. So the request is for Article 25 for all three areas. Is that right? That they would all be transferred to the select board?
Yes, all three of the parcels.
Oh, yeah.
Right, parcels.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Now, there was some talk about the possibility of the state constitution, Article 97, being involved in the I guess, one or two of these parcels. Has that been ruled out now?
I'm not sure I remember that as related to this property. So if any of the property is held in conservation, has a conservation restriction like we were just talking about a few of them.
Right. I'm referring to the January,
Yeah, so the legal memo. So
Yeah.
I think Mina included that in the event that any of the
There was.
that there was any
Okay.
conservation restriction
but there is.
on the property. I don't think we understand that to be the case.
All right, great.
Yeah.
And then the other thing in your memo, Carrie, it says at special town meeting 22 and 23, this is under the request on the first
Yes.
page. Funds were appropriated, including 1, 2, and 3. And number 3 is the surplus of the Peabody School property. What did you mean by that? That funds were appropriated for the
Yep, that
surplus?
that I should update that. There was no money voted for the Peabody School. I think I was combining a couple of things. So there were 3 actions that were part of that project.
Oh, okay.
The third was the surplus of the property, but
But no
the
funding.
funds were for the construction of the new
Right.
project and
Got it.
demolition of the existing Sanborn.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you digging into more details and actually finding an alternative revenue source, although I agree with you, it's going to be ultimately free cash, but it makes others happy or prefer that. Now, how would we proceed with that recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, so I would have to talk to the moderator because we would have to take up the parking meter, that article. I don't recall what that is off the top of my head, but I think it's later in the warrant. We really would have to take that up first.
Okay.
To surplus that.
I mean,
Whose decision is it? Is it? It's not our decision, right? We just vote whether we're in favor of this.
Well, I'd like feedback on the funding.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think it's simpler to go with the free cash because we're going to end up in the same place anyway. We don't have to reorder articles at the town meeting.
Okay.
So I agree. I thank you for pointing out the alternatives. To me, it doesn't change the answer, right? I mean, so it's not, I would say keep it simple, keep it in free cash. To the extent you want to say, hey, we thought we needed $100,000. We've really sort of worked this hard. We think we only need 85, and somebody wants to propose that as an amendment at the town meeting. Great. I mean, it just shows that we're continuing to dig and try to manage expenses and manage budget. I think that's probably up to you as to whether you want to.
We can actually put forward the motion that's
we could just
$85.
move it at a lower number.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
you just can't raise
So
it.
yeah, I mean, to the extent that that's doable and that just shows again diligence and trying to manage every dollar, I think that that would come across well.
Yeah, I've generally been supportive of the idea that this was outside the guidelines process because while I recognize that the school, built their budget based on the operational savings of going down to one building, it seemed to me that it was somewhat burdensome to expect that the town side of the guideline was going to suddenly pick up this extra cost, which is,
It's unknown, too.
I guess the word that comes to mind is dead weight. At the moment, the building has relatively little useful function. Obviously, the fields are still available and will continue to be used as I understand it. So I think given the fact that there needs to be some time to work out what the future of this property is, it makes sense, and I think it retains some focus on the fact that it is an asset that costs something to maintain and should be either put into a useful purpose or disposed of. I feel like this article, and hopefully it's only for 1 year, but it sets the stage for making a decision about this and recognizing what it costs us, what the cost of not making a decision is.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm supportive for 1 year. I'd like
Yeah.
us to
Yeah.
figure out how we go.
Well, I think that's why we started the land use matrix group,
Exactly.
because and we'll be talking more about the interlock of this over the next couple of weeks, because I believe it was our intention to get the 250th behind us and then seat that committee, and we've asked the boards. I think that this is as good a time as any to remind people that there is at least one at-large member of that board, and people who are interested in participating in this dialogue should fill out their volunteer cards and let us know of that interest before we look at that.
So do you want to make a motion to approve?
So-
This, it'll be the warrant article we'll be talking about later
Yeah.
also. But
think we need.
Right. We're going to go through town meeting warrant article recommendations, but if somebody wants to move that we recommend affirmative action on Article 25, they'll save us some time later.
so moved?
Yeah. Is it affirmative action though on it as written with the 100,000, or do we want to do it at 85?
85 is good. All right, so I'll move to approve the PBD's school operating costs at $85,000 and include that in the warrant article number
25.
25.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then the next item is a request from CCRSD to acknowledge a budget change. And so there's a memo from the assistant superintendent in your packet. What unfortunately didn't make it into your packet was just the cover email that came across. And there's a couple of pieces of information that I want to mention. So a regional school district has its excess and deficiency certified on an annual basis, just like a town has free cash certified on an annual basis. Under state law, a regional school district is limited to an E&D maximum of 5%. This is certified as of the beginning of each fiscal year. So we are between certifications right now. But CCRSD has its certification for 7/1/24, and it is under the 5%. Based on some budget work that the assistant superintendent is doing, he is estimating that when the next time E&D is certified, absent any action to make an adjustment, they will be over 5%. So when a regional school district is over 5%, E&D, it has to return the excess to its member communities proportionally. So the assistant superintendent and now the school committee, because the school committee has voted to support this, would like to adjust its fiscal 25 budget, its current budget, by $400,000 to take into account this additional revenue that it did not expect to have. And what it would like to do with that is to take $200,000 and put it into its existing capital stabilization fund, and take the other $200,000 and use that to make a fiscal 25 OPEB contribution. Now, in the fiscal 25 budget, the district intended to make an OPEB contribution, I believe, in the amount of $425,000, or give or take, $425. But it was not able to do that as planned because of some unanticipated special ed costs. So it would now like to make that contribution of $200,000. So there is a process, and the process is that the school committee votes. It then needs to inform its member communities within 7 days of the vote, which it has done. And then the member communities can decide if they want to take action on this. The body to take action is town meeting, because this is a budget. It's a budget issue. So the budget was approved by town meeting. Any budget adjustment, if the member towns wanted to take action would need to come from town meeting.
Hmm.
There is the school committee on its own in a regional school district can change. They can vote to change the budget, which they did.
Hmm.
And towns either actively approve that change through town meeting or passively approve that change through no action.
Hmm.
So the issue here with the timing, or the issue here is timing, that there 45 days from the date of the notice expires just a few days before our annual town meeting. So if Concord wanted to take action, it would be looking at calling a special town meeting.
Mhm.
Now, I can tell you in my experience working in communities where there are regional school districts, I've not seen a community call a special town meeting to take action. So approving this or accepting this passively is not out of the norm of how this is done in other communities.
Have you heard from Carlisle?
I have not heard from Carlisle. I did mean to reach out to the town manager, who I understand was away on PTO because of the school vacation. So I've
Yeah.
not had a chance to talk to him.
Because it probably, for Carlisle, it's within the 45 days.
Yes.
So I don't know what their intentions were. But the other thing I just want to point out, because this memo, as it turns out, there was something very similar last year. But the memo, as I read it, now I can't find it because the link is broken on the website, school's website. It did something similar. It made transfers out of E&D to certain funds. The memo at the time did not say it increased the FY24 budget. This is 24. But their minutes say that they did increase the FY24 budget. So I was kind of curious, did we get notified last year about anything? And maybe we didn't have to because it wasn't projected to be an overage of E&D. But we didn't get anything last year.
You know, I'd have to go back and look. I would assume that if it was a budget adjustment, we did receive the notification. I can't recall off the top of my head.
So it's just a precedent because I just want people to know that I think we might have already done this last year.
Well, it wasn't the same thing. It didn't involve the E&D.
Well, it did.
It
Actually,
did.
and you know what? I will write to the school committee and get that copy of that memo
All right.
because
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
saw it and noted to someone else that last year's memo didn't say, or they didn't say they were increasing the budget, but the minutes of that meeting say they did. So I do want to get a little follow up. So I just wanted to say it's not uncommon that the region's done this.
Yeah, I'd also note though that as part of the memo from Bob Conroy, they do point to the source of this excess revenue is the closeout surplus refund from the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group in the amount of $250,000. So that's related to the change of the health insurance plan for employees and a refund of previously paid funds from the town. So it's a pretty unusual thing. Absent that, they'd probably be, even with the additional other revenues that they weren't expecting, they probably wouldn't be above the E&D cap. So it might, I don't recall it, running into this last year, but I'm just pointing out that, we don't change health plans very frequently. And these kinds of things really seem to happen pretty infrequently. Also, generally speaking, I think that funding OPEB is good, bringing down that liability, and the stabilization plan, capital stabilization, also is a useful thing to do. Although this got discussed pretty extensively at last week's finance committee meeting, and the suggestion was that might then almost immediately become the source for funds for the amenities building should they
Have overages.
be over budget on that.
So I'm not crystal clear. Are we voting on something, or is this is the school?
Well, we're
Committee's
understanding the
made their vote, but
context,
it's back to us now about whether we want to take action
right?
within that 45
And
days.
I did dive into the Mass General laws on this, and basically, it's if we do if we do nothing and town meeting does nothing, then this goes through. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not necessary for us to take action unless for some
But we
reason
could.
we really object to what is proposed here.
You could also vote to take no action, just to be clear. for the
Just to
record.
be clear. Yeah.
So, I mean, the OPEB personally seems fine to me. Do we know how much we have in capital stabilization?
I don't think they have much
For the
because they
school,
used it
yeah.
for the design of the building.
I think they said $5,000 or
Yeah,
something.
it was very low.
It's-
Yeah.
That's right. You're right. I think
It's
you're right.
very it's nominal at the moment.
It's a fairly new fund that they
Yeah.
established
Yeah, it was.
maybe within the last 3 years.
Yeah.
For the drive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm in support of no action or voting no action.
Me too.
It's just it's a
Okay.
process and a transparency thing. I think is important.
If there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Okay, so I will. What are we going to say? Recommend that we take no action as a result of receiving the notification from CCRSD around the excess deficiency account status and the FY25 budget change.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for
Thank you.
steering us through that.
And I'll follow up on the 24 because I want to know what happened.
Yeah, now I'm curious. Because
Okay.
neither Mark nor I is remembering it the
I
same
don't-
way.
Yeah,
That's interesting. So thank you.
great. Okay. So now, and I would suggest we look at page 134 of the packet here. The work that we are about is deciding whether we're ready to vote a recommendation to town meeting for the purposes of appearing in the I'm forgetting the word
Briefing book.
briefing book. Thank you. It's not the finance committee report anymore.
And what's our deadline for
It's like
that
the 5th
briefing?
or
I
something.
believe May 5th.
So
So
that's
Next Friday.
that's today and next Monday.
next Monday is the
But next Monday doesn't count because they're
so there are some articles that remain to be heard. And the finance committee will be conducting the last hearing this Thursday night
Mhm.
at 7:00. So there are some that mostly enterprise budgets and Article 33. But I think that we have heard from most of them. We are expecting a presentation or at least a dialogue with with Anthony and some members of the finance committee on the stabilization account
On the 12th,
policy items. So I would suggest that, and I think we were going to do that on the 5th as well. So I would suggest we might want to hold off on those. But other than that, we might.
What about Article 34, the stormwater? I don't know if we've heard that.
It
or
hasn't. No. It's May
That's
1st.
going.
That's
that's
But
gonna
the
be
ones
one of
that
the-
yes next to them. The other
The
ones.
stormwater enterprise fund expenditures is an enterprise fund.
right, but it's
enterprise
not.
budget
It
hearing.
hasn't even been presented yet.
It hasn't been.
Hasn't been
It will be
Good.
on May 1st.
Good.
Right.
Okay. Good.
So in the table that we have in front of us, the ones that are labeled yes have already been. And where there's a recommendation listed, those are the ones that we've already taken a recommendation on. So let's just start at the top. Generally, we don't take a position on. Well, we can take a position on meeting procedure. That's a routine article that's been done year after year, and I would suggest that we continue to support it. It's the one about can't propose something that's not paid for.
Right.
So sorry, but the ones that say already heard a public hearing, no. Are we?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
So I think this is outdated because
This is the
we just
version
had a
that we
public
had
hearing.
last time. So
Okay.
yeah, so
So
there are some.
So that may not necessarily exclude.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are we, well, I can make a motion. Do you want to make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 3 meeting procedure?
Recommend affirmative action on Article 3. Yes, we do. And do we have
Second.
a second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. We already took positions on Articles 4 and 5. Those are the Personnel Board actions. So Article 6, there's no motion expected under Article 6. That would be current year budget adjustments should they come up. If there is something moved under that, we would make a recommendation at town meeting. And then Article 7 is the FY26 budget.
And I'd like to talk to you about that.
Yes.
And Andrea, if you could put up some slides. You have hard copies because the slides that I put together, that's it.
Yeah.
A bit tough to read.
And just by way of introduction, the Finance Committee did discuss this and identified some issues with primarily the revenue side, and so I have asked Carrie to clarify them for us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So again, this article came up at public hearing before the 250th, and because of the length or the amount of time that meeting went on, the Finance Committee postponed taking any or having any deliberation or making any recommendation on a number of articles, including the town budget, and then scheduled a meeting for last Thursday. Because that was a special meeting, our CFO had some scheduled PTO and he was not available. I did check in with him about the possibility of attending the meeting, and he didn't understand there to be any issue. And so I was not in attendance at the meeting last Thursday. I have heard some feedback from some people who were at the meeting, and apparently there were some significant issues raised about revenue. So I wanted to talk to you about revenue. And I put together a few slides that I hope will help the conversation. So as you know, the budget process, the budget development process takes place over a number of months. We start very early in the timetable in comparison to a number of communities. And so there are best guess estimates that are put together with the first forecasts, and then they are revised over time as new information becomes available. And so the CFO put together a number of forecasts, revisions of the forecast. I think there are 9 at this point in time. And again, it's just because new information becomes available. After the conversation that I was advised about at the Finance Committee meeting last night, I went back through, spent some time over the weekend going back through, and I had 5 of those revisions. So I believe 5 of those or versions of the forecast had been shared publicly. I think some of the other ones were just internal. And on this first slide, the version of the forecast that I think best reflects what the Finance Committee had available to it at the time that it set its guideline is this one that's called Projected Version 7. Now, it is dated March 10, 2025. The guideline was set earlier than that. There is a version 3 that matches this fairly closely, but just because of the size of the information, I wanted to make it legible. So they're very similar, but I believe this version 7 is what the Finance Committee had available. So projected revenue at $144.13 million, and then expenditures at the same amount. There was a version 8 and a version 9 that were issued more recently. I'll talk just a minute about the expenditure difference. So again, when the Finance Committee set its guidelines, the total expenditure for the general fund was $144,129,000. There were some adjustments that have been made since, most notably in this version 7. $1 million worth of the middle school debt was netted. So it's not, it was taken from expense, and the revenue from the stabilization fund was not included. It's not how I would present things, but it's just not contemplated here. So it's a wash.
No.
But it does need to be added because the full amount of the debt needs to be appropriated, and the revenue, when we report to the state, we're going to report the full amount of the exempt debt, and you can make an adjustment for other revenue to offset, but you have to appropriate that.
Yeah.
So that is an adjustment that needed to be made. There was a request to include estimates for the debt service, the fiscal 26 debt service associated with the roads program if Article 8 passes, and the amenities building if that article passes. From my perspective, it's not a foregone conclusion that there's any debt expense associated with those projects in 26, but what the CFO has estimated is short-term financing and the interest costs associated.
And where is that, in version 9 or?
That is, I'm comparing the difference between projected version 7 and then that town meeting control, that last column.
Yeah.
So I just want to walk you through how we got from 144.13 to 145.2.
Okay, so the last thing you just said was the debt was adjusted for
in
the
the
roads.
town non-guidelines FY26 debt exclusion line,
Got
which
it.
is blank in the first two
The
columns.
143,000.
Yeah.
Got
And then the final adjustment was just in the town's assessment for exempt debt service for CCRSD. And I'm not sure if that was as a result of percentages or we were carrying a number that wasn't quite right. So that's how, on the expense side, how we get from where we were when the finance committee approved its guideline to where we are now and what will be presented in totality to town meeting at the beginning of June. So I think I'd like to go to the next slide and start talking about revenue. So again, version 7, the property tax impact, which of course is, I think, one of the things that everybody's most interested in and concerned with. At the time of guidelines, the increase in property tax was $4.1 million over the current year. And that was a total increase of 4.84%. Now, the way that I've broken this out is for my former finance committee members, you will remember we always talked about property tax increase to the existing base, what was coming from new growth, what was coming from exempt debt. So I laid it out that way. I'm not sure that the finance committee this year looked at it this way, but I think this is helpful, knowing that 4 out of 5 of you have been through this process with the finance committee. So again, 4.84%.
So sorry, 4.84 is total.
Is the total.
At the guideline.
At the guideline. At the time of guideline, that was the estimate.
Yes.
Of tax increase.
Right.
And that includes the additional existing, the additional exemptions.
New growth is less than it was for last year.
It is right now. It's projected at less.
So the existing base tax increase would be higher than 4.84.
It's a
No, this is inclusive. So the increase at the existing base is 3.98 as a result of budget, and 1.1 as a result of debt, exempt debt.
Okay.
I'm not sure I always understood this well, but the finance committee, this is how the finance committee typically.
normally the new growth number is not known.
Correct.
So it's based on building permits and what, so it's typically estimated conservatively and rarely, unless we actually have something in hand. So it's often a little lower and then the actual is whatever it is.
So the big change is in the exempt debt.
It is. There is $1,350,000 in additional exempt debt coming on the tax rate in fiscal 26, mostly a result of the middle school project. But it will be softened by $1 million from the draw from the middle school stabilization.
Right. So in version 7, they hadn't taken the $1 million out yet.
But they didn't include the revenue either. It just wasn't.
Right. So why is there a big difference then between those two columns? On the next to last line, the property tax impact exempt debt goes from 1.1% to 0.3%.
Could everyone please speak into their mics? Because the stabilization was applied.
But
Right.
she said,
Wasn't it? Oh, it's not.
So what I will tell you is I've done the best that I could in a fairly short amount of time to
Right.
synthesize all of the data that the CFO and the finance committee has been going through for months.
right.
Months now. In version 7, I am not seeing the expense related to that $1 million of additional debt, nor am I seeing the use of the stabilization fund.
But when you look at the percentages, it almost looks like the expense was in version 7, but not the revenue. But I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. So
Yeah, and
okay.
we will be going back to the finance committee on Thursday, and I will continue to work on this in the absence of the CFO, who is back on Wednesday, to see if I'm missing something. But I am not seeing it. I'm seeing it netted.
Yeah.
Right.
So right now, based upon the revenue projections and the revenue projections that will accompany the spending that goes to town meeting, the overall impact to property tax is an increase of 4.05%. So it is less than when the finance committee looked at guidelines. I do, once we are comfortable with this, I also want to talk about the other sources of revenue supporting spending.
So I'm just trying to make sure I follow. This is V7, these things, guidelines V7.
Yes.
The first page had this projected version 9.
8, 9.
So is V9 the
Town
most-
meeting control, yeah.
But
Well,
There is an adjustment that I found that needed to be made to the version 9.
okay,
And so
that is
that's
the
the TM.
TM control on the first page,
Oh.
which then ties to the TM control on the
Yes.
second page.
yes.
Got it. Okay.
Actually, I think I figured it out because I'm not sure if this is right, but in the TM control, you've got $1 million coming out in the stabilization fund
Yes.
that you didn't have in V7. So if in both versions it was added in and netted out somewhere else, and then again the million's coming out here but not there, that could be why the difference is showing up at the bottom. I don't know if I'm being clear.
No, I understand what you're saying. I am not
Right, we don't know.
completely
Right.
satisfied that I understand the
Yep.
progression of exempt debt. I'm still working on it,
Right.
but I've seen enough to believe that it's netted and just not
Yep. Thank you.
included. So then on the last page, and I think the biggest issue for the finance committee, even though I was not at the meeting, I have not watched the tape, I'm just going off of what people are saying, is there's a concern that there is a late in the game adjustment to increase property taxes. And I'm paraphrasing based on what I'm hearing, and I may not be correct.
Mark, you were there. I know you were there. You were there. I was listening in. What I understood it to be is if you look at this first page, my understanding was this local receipts and available funds, right? That revenue, that it went from somebody was looking at a version that had that 18,807, and then looking at the next version that had the 17,944.
Yes.
And saying, "Oh my gosh, revenue went down 800 and something $1,000," and doesn't that mean that because revenue went down by that much that we will then have to make up for it by increasing taxes by that much to offset it? So I think that was basically the conversation.
Yes.
Right.
And the concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, what I will say is that version 8 that shows local receipts and other sources at 18.8 is an anomaly. All of the other versions show local receipts and other sources much closer. You can see the one at the time of guidelines showed it at 16.1. Version 9 shows it at 17.9. So the issues I've outlined the issues that I'm seeing. It is unfortunate that version 8 was released because there are clearly some issues. These are issues that we had been that finance had been tracking, and I just have to believe, just as a result of everything happening with the 250th and a rush maybe to get a document out, there was a version that some things were adjusted, but not all of the things that all of the issues that were known.
Yeah, which is, I think, the value of going all the way back to what was the guideline actually built on in the first place and comparing that to our best information today. And I think when you do that comparison, you see that, in fact, there's been virtually no movement, $50,000 of movement in the property tax, no movement whatsoever in state aid, and local receipts are actually up compared to the guideline at 1.8.
Because there's a typo in the version 7 in the interest line that's marked in green there.
Yeah. Right.
Looks like someone started typing it in, their phone rang, they get interrupted, they forgot to put in the last 3 zeros. So that's the big change there.
I mean, a lot of the discussion during that meeting too, so pilot and the big access.
Right.
Right.
Finance being raised in the public hearing too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It looks to me like the TM control number looks good.
Right.
We should focus.
Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to because of this, the finance committee elected to ask for more information and schedule some extra time this Thursday to hear this. But I also felt like since we are contemplating making we were scheduled to make our recommendation around this article at today's meeting, I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to understand it ourselves. Really, the moving pieces of this are not really directly reflected in the actual budget plan or the appropriations under the town budget article.
Right.
But I thought that since it's so closely related and there was so much question about it, that it made sense for us to get that briefing now. Okay. So thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Thank you.
So with that as the background, are we ready to make a recommendation on Article 7, the FY26 town budget?
My only question would be just if the finance committee it's just a procedural one. Like, do we want to vote on it before the finance committee votes on it?
During that conversation, and I agree with Mark, was a lot of discussion going on.
Wendy and folks, your voices keep fading,
Yeah,
so
you know what?
it's
It
a
went
little
off.
hard to
Yeah.
hear and follow. Thank you.
Yep, no, the mic went off. It was interesting. So there was a lot of discussion about everything but the town manager's budget that got people confused. But the town manager's budget hasn't changed at all since you presented it. So we're good. Yes, it is. It wasn't before.
Okay.
So you know what? I'm fine voting now, even without the finance committee's discussion about the town manager's budget.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. The town manager's budget
Right.
is a different issue
From this.
Right.
yes.
That was
Voting on the town manager's budget. Sorry.
right.
Right.
Yep.
I misspoke. That actually this is the issue. That what we were just talking about is what they're revisiting.
Right.
Town manager.
But it's what
Right.
kept them from voting on the
Yeah,
town manager's
they-
budget.
They
Right.
were, let's say, sufficiently distracted by the possibility that
Yes.
revenue had dropped by $1 million that they felt that it might become an issue. But I think that with further information in front of us, we can see that, at least relative to the guideline, and the town manager is submitting a budget at the guideline, we should.
I move that we vote affirmative action on Article 7, the town FY26 town budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next article is Article 8, the debt exclusion for road maintenance. This is the major capital program, which would help to restore our roads to condition in the past. The Finance Committee did vote to recommend affirmative action on this. I'm just checking.
It was 9-3.
It was 9-3. Yeah. Thank you.
So I had another meeting that night and I did catch I missed Article 7, but I turned it on after 9 o'clock. I couldn't believe they were only up to Article 8. But I am in large supporter of this. I think we need it. But the part that hasn't been clear to me and to some of the public is if you add in if Article 8 passes, we still have the $2 million a year and the other part of the budget. So Carrie,
So the intent is 5 million for roads. So whether you want to say we're going to take out, and to be clear, I know we're saying we've been spending 2 million a year on roads. In our best year, we're spending 2 million, but we'll say 2 million. So either we're going to take out the 2 million and you're going to add in 5 million, or you're going to net it and it's a plus 3 million.
Yeah.
However you want to look at it. We're not looking at a request for 7 million.
Right.
Now it is, and I have to talk to the moderator about how we're going to handle this as well, because this is put forward as a debt exclusion. So two prongs, right? We have to approve it at town meeting and it needs to be approved at the ballot. If it fails, if it's approved at town meeting and fails at the ballot, we want to make sure we have funding, the $2 million worth of funding. So I will be talking to the moderator about how we can have a contingency, how we can structure a contingency vote to make sure that in the event it fails, either at town meeting or the ballot, we don't have zero.
right. So that's a really good point. But my original question is, I guess, when we're looking at the whole forecast, it's in both. We have 7 million in here, right?
No, I was just going to say in the capital budget, there is a note in there that says if this roads program passes,
Right.
which is why it's ahead, that $2 million will not be part of that.
Right. But what I don't understand is whether the whole 7 million is in all the numbers we were just looking at
No.
of the forecast.
Only 2 of it is, because 2 of it is part of the regular capital plan.
Right. And
And it's there as a backup.
plus the debt service is in for the first year of the 5 million.
It's only debt service because even at the $2 million funding, it's debt funded. So it's debt service, not.
Okay, but if the 5 million passes at both the town meeting and the ballot, then the 2 million comes out, and the 4%, whatever it was, increase in the property tax would be a lot less. Is that right?
Well, it would
So I'm
be
trying to figure out
the
here.
debt service on $2 million a year would be the reduction.
43,000.
So 2 million isn't cash; it's only debt service.
Yeah, as excluded debt. So one of the things that was pointed out in the discussion was, assuming this passes, it does create a little bit of extra headroom under the levy limit, because the 2 million of excluded debt that's in the regular roads program that we're used to is within the levy limit borrowing, as opposed to we're specifically excluding the roads, the $5 million road program from that. So it creates a little bit of capacity, but
Okay, here's where I was confused and where the public might get confused. The 2 million is borrowing.
yes,
We're only talking about enough headroom of debt service. We're not talking about 2 million of
right,
headroom.
yes,
Okay, so what I think is that really needs to be explained. I think at the public hearing,
Captions of the cost. And also the amenities building. So you can actually look and say, what's the 26 expense, the 27?
minus the 2 million.
No, it takes the 2 million and then shows you the borrowing that's related to it, and it does it by year.
Would it be helpful to simply put the number out there that says, what does $1 million of debt actually expected to cost us in FY26? Because if we have that as a working number, then we could say that whatever that number is times 2 is the savings in the budget versus the excluded debt cost. Because the cost of borrowing is basically the same. The market doesn't care whether it's excluded or not when we go to borrow it, but
Right.
we could then,
But I think
yeah,
I think
yeah,
we need that, Mark, but we also need,
yeah.
what does the roads program really cost? Because it's the net of the 5 million debt service minus
Well,
2 million debt service. So
Yeah.
that's
So functionally, what Article 8 is about is replacing
right.
the annual roads program for a period of 5 years with an enhanced road program, which is debt excluded, which is designed to fill the gap around about a $10 million backlog in roads projects and keep us current. So the idea is to try to actually improve our pavement condition index so that we're not on that steep slope where every year the roads get worse faster than we can fix them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only question that came up for the finance committee that I could see and could come up for the public is, how much is this really going to cost?
Well,
And that was really confusing because they were using the whole 25 or 27 million, and that's not the right
Oh,
number.
by year, yeah.
So somebody needs to come up with, what is this really going to cost?
there's
Is there a spreadsheet?
I appreciate that. Having been close to this for a couple decades now, if you can tell me the price of oil, I can tell you how much it's going to cost to fix the road. Because what it really turns out to be is that a major cost is the asphalt contracting that goes along with the roads, and that fluctuates with the cost of, with the market price of oil.
Okay, I
So,
agree with all that, but
yeah.
to keep it simple, stupid, just all we need to do is to say it's not going to cost the taxpayers 25 million. It's the net,
I
and
think
have a slide
Finance
about
committee
it.
is going to do that in their budget. It's not the budget book.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In that briefing
It's
book.
briefing book.
Yeah,
Each
that's
article is going to have the FY26 tax impact to it.
But it should have the net tax impact. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a finance committee discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
guess.
I was thinking that even the finance committee seemed confused the night I was looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So bringing us
So-
back to
So I'm in
Article 8.
I'm still in support of Article 8.
Yeah,
Make
yeah.
a motion if you'd like.
I mean, the thing with me is I'm fully supportive, and I think people have probably heard me talk about it. I think we do need to, update the note. I do get concerned about the total dollar amount that we're talking about. Not just specifically to this article, but just the sum total of what is on the plate and what we can afford. And, for me, one of the things too is just like, yes, this is the plan if it's the ideal plan, right? I get a lot of ideal plans at work that you then say, okay, but I only have this much money. And 10 people that want that money, how can we tighten it up? How can we, really look to sort of manage this? So I am supportive of the roads. I just, part of me nags at like, okay, how can we have that discipline to say, okay, it's still some part of me sort of like, okay, then you're just giving people a blank, a big check and saying, okay, as opposed to like, really let's push on how do we make this the most cost effective.
So that was the discussion at FinCom, and that is exactly why I'm trying to make this point. I think if people see the net cost, whatever it is, it's going to be so much less than if you delay. If you delay 5 or 10 years, it's going to be so much more. So that's the point that needs to be made with real dollars on a hypothetical house. And that's the thing I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, this is really money that's expected to go against an asset that is on the edge of deteriorating rather quickly. And so the backlog is going to grow faster than we can address it. So while I share your concerns about what kinds of things are we buying, this is something we already own that needs to be maintained, as opposed to something new that we might be buying, which is costing. That's the way I think about it.
It also provides Alan different contract efficiency.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's significant in the same way the South Tower having a longer duration contract allows. So I think that much.
Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. I think also just it's collectively, right? Because this isn't any one person or department. We're saying it's collectively as a town, as a leadership group, having that. So you look at what Carrie just went through. Hey, $100,000. I've tightened it up and I've looked at 3 different options, and I can do it for 85. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome, right? And now we're talking 27.5
Yeah.
billion.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and to that point, though, by metering out the money for roads $2 million at a time annually, we have put ourselves in a position where we cannot be that proactive. By taking a vote now that says over 5 years, we are making the commitment to spend up to $25 million. That creates the ability to actually do projects at scale and essentially time when those projects are done to optimize around.
And really, it's 15 million because we would otherwise spend 10 million.
Yeah, we would spend
Right?
10 million.
So
Right. No,
I mean,
it's
keep that in mind too.
incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, to just
Yeah.
use round numbers.
Right. Yep. Okay, are we ready for
All right.
motion?
I make a motion that we vote affirmative
We have a
action
lot of these tonight.
on Article 8, the debt exclusion for road maintenance.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next one is Article 9, the FY26 capital improvement and debt plan. So this is the capital plan with the items that we just referred to in there. And it was presented at budget hearing. Any comments on Article 9?
I'm in support of the article.
Do I have a
And it does
motion?
note the 2 million not being applied.
Right.
But, to Carrie's point about what happens if the vote doesn't pass, that's something that I think should be addressed in that article presentation.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 8. Oh, no, Article 9, the FY26 capital improvement and debt plan.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Article 10 is the CPS operating budget.
Again, has the FinCom voted on this one?
Yes,
Yes, they voted
sorry,
affirmative,
I'll make
yep.
a note if any, but they recommended affirmative action on this. And I believe that was unanimous.
Okay, so they delayed on the other article.
Yes.
Just Article 7.
Interesting.
But
So I move that we take affirmative action on Article 10, CPS operating budget.
Second.
any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Article 11 is the Concord Public Schools capital budget. The FinCom also recommended affirmative action on this budget.
I move that we take affirmative action on Article 11, the CPS capital budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Article 12, the CCRSD regional budget.
And the Finance Committee voted
Recommended affirmative action on Article 12, rather.
Yes. I make a motion that we take affirmative action on Article 12, CCRSD budget.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Article 13 is the amenities building. That did also have some discussion.
7 to 5.
Yeah, it was a 7 to 5 vote. There was some of the same things we heard at the hearing. Probably the new information on that related to whether the budget included an estimated cost of up to $200,000 for a sewer hookup for this building. And it came out in that discussion that the Public Works Commission doesn't really have an application yet for the amenities building. Julie Viola, who was there presenting for the region, did sort of remind the Finance Committee that one of the original design concepts was for composting toilets, which of course don't need a sewer hookup. So this was new information for them. There's concern that 200,000 may be the max capacity, i.e. planning for graduation every day kind of thing, rather than how such a building would really be used.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, there doesn't yet exist a commitment for sewer and sewer capacity, and there was quite a bit of discussion about that.
But the max of 200,000 could also be covered by
Yes.
the new stabilization fund.
Right. There was also, more conversation about, why isn't this going to the CPC? Carlisle is using CPC funds to do this. They made an application to Carlisle CPC, and that's before their town meeting. Those funds would be good for 3 years, should they get them from Carlisle, which kind of begs the question of if there's, similar funds, and there do appear to be in the community preservation committee's coffers, why this might not wait until next year.
But you can't assume that CPC would approve it.
You can't assume.
And the longer they wait, the higher the construction costs are going to get in this environment. It's going to.
But if this article passes, can they still go to CPC next year and get an offset?
So there's a retro question going on. Because
Right.
if they proceed with the project, I don't think they can, because you can't retroactively fund. Although we have a CPC member here.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference of opinion on whether or not it qualifies for CPC funding. I feel like there's a difference of opinion on whether or not you can retroactively apply funds to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was a question around whether it qualifies. I think that's been from other towns.
I'm going to
You can
recognize.
recognize
I would
someone.
like to delay voting on this one until next week or the week after or something. I don't feel ready to take a position tonight.
All right, just hold that thought. I'm going to recognize Paul Bone, who's a current member of the CPC.
Still,
So,
Yeah, Paul Baum, 11 Ridgewood Road. Speaking for myself as a member of the CPC, not for the CPC. When the Concord Middle School was voted on a town meeting, I believe there was a recommendation at that time for the school committee to go back to the CPC to see if they could offset some of the costs. In fact, they did that. School committee, Dr. Hunter went to the CPC for funding for the athletic fields.
That's right.
And CPC funded $250,000 for the athletic fields, which Anthony told me was saved $60,000 in debt service. So, and that was retroactive. So I think there's a precedent for, even if this is voted on as a capital expenditure at town meeting, for deferral of costs down the road as part of it, maybe all of it. We don't know. I can't speak for CPC. And yes, there are funds, significant funds available to at least offset some of these costs. That's my personal view.
thank you, Paul.
the only other thing I'll just mention is at the finance committee, there's some concern around capacity of $1,000 per day, but I think that was dispelled. That there
Capacity of what?
of the sewer connection. That would be some concern there, and then so the chair of the DPW, no, it wasn't. It was Andrea Sullivan, was
Yeah.
on the committee, suggested it would not be a concern.
Right. So the numbers for the sewer hookup are very rough, and Alan Cathcart also
He was there.
appeared and indicated that they did not have an actual plan to review, and so it was somewhat speculative as to what that is. I think that there are reasons to be concerned about how thoroughly this plan has been vetted. Nevertheless, some of the no votes on the finance committee were related to a preference for CPC or the procedures that have been followed to try to bring a really complete package to town meeting are a little wanting. I guess I'd remind us at this point that we actually have three choices when we're making our recommendations. One being affirmative action, the other being no action, and the third being that we could say that we're going to make a recommendation at town meeting if we think that there's more information that's forthcoming that would support that.
That's okay. So the briefing book is coming out. The deadline's May 5th, which
Yeah.
is that? Are
So-
we meeting on May 5th?
We're meeting next Monday. We could add this to that agenda. I just
Is that too late though? Is the deadline like?
well, we're going. My understanding is they're going to accept our
Okay.
recommendations that we do there.
Okay.
My question though is, what are we going to know then that we don't know now?
Right.
There's nothing scheduled that's going to clarify this in that time frame.
Right,
Now,
right.
if we want to seek more information between now and town meeting, then we have
Okay.
about 3 weeks to
Right.
find out what we need to know. And I guess I
Right.
would ask us, what do we need to know?
I think there was going to be discussion at the next DPW
Yeah.
meeting also.
Yeah.
So I'm fine waiting till town
So-
meeting if that's what we want to do,
Yeah.
because then we'll have more time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we want to delay till next week, we can.
But between now and like a week, we're going to learn more. When's the next DPW meeting? Is that?
Yeah, I think it was after our next meeting or two.
I have it on the May 21st.
Do we need a DPW meeting or just an answer from Alan?
Well, Alan spoke at the
Well-
meeting.
Well, he said they don't have a permit yet.
Yeah, he said they don't have an application
They
yet.
don't have an application.
Yeah.
But there's going to be more discussion.
I mean, the fact of the matter, so from my viewpoint, right, is if you don't get sewer approval, you're not gonna do the project, right? I mean, you
And then
can't-
the money wouldn't be spent.
and then
That
the money
actually
wouldn't be
did
spent,
come up. That
right?
actually was
so there's
discussed.
sort of a like, okay, we could wait to see
like what people think about the sewer, but that isn't really gonna. I mean, that becomes a little bit of a. You need it to do the project. So do we support moving ahead and doing the project? Certainly, it is a project that I'm supportive of personally. I have had and will continue to advocate that we should be using CPC funds for this, even if we can have the CPC meet before the town meeting somehow, and but if there's so I'm supportive of moving forward on the amenities building, knowing that we would be trying to, in some way, shape, or form, also seek CPC funding this year or next to offset the cost to the taxpayers. But for me personally, whether or not we get the sewer thing, it's a part of the project that we're going to have to get, but it doesn't influence my decision to want to move forward.
My concern about it is that this article is for $1.4 million, and if you add another 200 to that, in the worst case scenario, that's a pretty significant chunk of the budget to be sort of unsure about. Now, hopefully, the numbers are a lot less than that. It's hard to imagine that our own Public Works Commission would really reject this. There was a question about whether this permit might somehow be able to be covered with is extra flow from the high school because presumably some restroom facilities are being used somehow.
Yeah, that was
and to what extent does it offset use that's coming in otherwise? I think all of that kind of needs to be done, and
I agree. I'm just not decided. There's too many unknowns. I don't think I could vote right now.
So let's agree that we'll revisit this on Monday and try and decide whether between then and now whether there's any new information that we would get. Okay.
I'd like to know if it really is true that CPC could fund something retroactively if it started.
I wouldn't even call it retroactive.
Well, it's already started. I guess that's my question. It's not a prospective request for funding.
What do you mean already
I think
started?
I guess if this gets approved,
Right.
Because the argument was, well, they can still go to CPC. So they really want to get going with construction as soon as possible.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
That's the issue.
Okay, well, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
Mark, may I speak for a moment from the CPC, Diane Proctor?
Sure, Diane.
I promise to be very brief. Diane Proctor,
I did not
57
see your
Sudbury
hand
Road,
was up.
a member of the CPC, and speaking for myself. I just want to disabuse anybody of the notion that the CPC could kind of quickly meet and make a decision. We have to make those decisions in the context of all the other applications, and we don't know what those are going to be yet. So we can't really make promises. We certainly wanted to do it last year, but we certainly cannot make promises for next year in any way. And to kind of dangle that out there for people might be confusing to the general public. That would just simply be inappropriate and irresponsible on the part of the CPC from my perspective. So as for the retrospective and whether we can do that, that requires greater research. But we certainly cannot make a decision ahead of time. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. And I'd point out that even if the CPC were to accept it into its application process, decide to support it, we're talking next year's town meeting before those are appropriated anyway, which is because it's a whole town meeting cycle.
okay, so then it is retroactive by then. Okay.
Potentially, if the project is started. If the project is not started, then it
Okay.
And then
It's
that's the
not
argument
started.
of if you delay a year, the construction costs are going to really skyrocket. It'll cost more.
yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk more.
So
on
we've decided to defer this. We don't need to vote. We will put it on the May 5th agenda. Okay. The non-resident tuition revolving fund article. This is a schools article that has to do with the ability to use funds that are collected for the benefits of the school. The Finance Committee voted affirmative action on it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just hope the Finance Committee makes sure that the revenues that are received are fully reviewed and discussed in future budget cycles, just so we understand how much tuition being offset.
Right. So
It's a great idea.
what has been happening in the past?
They haven't done anything. So this will open a door to potentially, and I think it's really Carlisle students that might be able to participate in probably more like special ed in the CPS. This is a non-resident tuition revolving fund, so they could enroll non-Concord students and get tuition reimbursement, tuition
So
revenue from
right
it.
now, we don't have any non-resident students?
It's not at CPS. The high school we do.
Okay. And how do we do it at the high school?
They have a revolving fund,
Okay.
and they're charged tuition.
Okay.
That's very popular.
And is the tuition?
I don't know anything about tuition.
Yeah, I mean, is it like the real cost, or is?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I believe that was included in the presentation from
Yeah.
the assistant superintendent, and it was.
I think it was.
Was that?
Okay. I'll go
was
back.
very
and look at
comparable to
The
the
existing?
per pupil
Yeah.
spending.
that. Okay.
Mhm. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Okay, so I make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 14, the non-resident tuition revolving fund for CPS.
Any further questions? All those in favor? Oh, did I
Aye.
hear a
Second.
second? Thank you. Got a second. Now, do I hear all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Article 15, facilities rental revolving fund.
So I think this is another opportunity, particularly with a new school building,
Right.
that they have the opportunity to rent out that facility. So
Okay,
again,
now
it's a
I-
revolving fund, and revenues can be.
I know
captured.
that CPS has been renting their facilities in the past.
I think the money goes to the town. The receipts go to the town.
I think I can tell you we do not receive very much in revenue for rentals from the school. I think right now it probably goes into a revolving fund for custodians, and they pay the cost of custodians. I think that's how
I think
it
you're right.
works because we're not
Because
we're not
that's the
receiving
fee.
revenue.
The
And that's
fee
their
was.
intent on this, to use these funds in the same
So
way.
how would this be different from the custodian revolving fund then?
They could charge a fee associated with the cost of the facility versus just the cost of the personnel.
Okay.
So more fully capturing the cost of
Okay.
that.
Right, and it's a revenue opportunity. We keep asking people for revenue
Yep, yep,
opportunities,
yep.
so this is one.
Okay.
Discussion. I'll move to take affirmative action on Article 15, facilities rental revolving fund.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Article 16. What is that? Let me make sure that. Yeah, this is the article that was referred to earlier, the authority to contract for up to 5 years on selected items.
I think we've
Or
discussed this
greater
several
than 5
times.
years.
I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 16, authority to contract for up to 5 years for selected items.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 18 and 19 are the,
What about 17?
17,
sorry, let me check.
which the Finance Committee voted affirmative action. As well.
I lost my place.
Oh, it's a
17.
Minuteman
That was
budget.
Minuteman.
Oh, Minuteman budget,
Yep.
thank you. Okay. All those, any discussion on the Minuteman budget?
Nope, it was there. I make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 17, Minuteman Regional Technical School District budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 18 and 19 are the capital stabilization fund articles. I have been in contact with Don Kupka of the Finance Committee, and they do have a proposal or he does have a proposal for policy around what these targets are. I think several of us spoke at the public hearing around these articles, seeking an understanding of what the targets were, what the funding plans were, and so forth. What came out of those discussions, though, is a sense and that the Finance Committee doesn't feel like they're empowered to actually set the policy, which begs the question of where would such a policy, would that come to this board, or is that a town manager policy, or?
I think it would come to this board. I can tell you years ago, we had a lot of discussion about who made financial policy, because the existing policies we have from my read were a documentation of the policies that the CFO was, our long tenured CFO was following
Yes.
Years ago. But I think that the chair has talked to either Mr. Kupka or the chair of the finance committee, and they were thinking that maybe this is a joint discussion, that you would take input from the FinCom, but that the select board would set the policy.
Right. So I'll ask Andrea after the meeting to distribute the memo that Don has written and shared with the finance committee, and it also references some of the applicable laws. And so all I'm really saying is, in preparation for the discussion with the finance committee, I think it would make sense for us to familiarize ourselves with those.
And are those, were also documents shared at the finance committee back in March when these were discussed. Those should be distributed and shared as well, because it speaks to best practices from finance and different.
Right.
So, and also the finance committee's voted to take the recommendation on these two articles at town meeting.
Yes. And that was part, I think, largely because we were planning to have a further discussion about this.
And then I think Mary said they were going to come on the 12th.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that we're going to probably end up also making our recommendations at town meeting. But we can, do we want to vote that and just say that now?
I'll make a motion that we vote our recommendations at town meeting for both Articles 18 and 19.
No, not that we make the recommendation.
That we report, I'm sorry.
Report at town meeting, right.
At town meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank
Second.
you. All right. Cameron beat you.
Uh-oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before you move on, could we go back to Article 16?
Sure.
Article 16, and I apologize, I didn't catch this. This is a request from the school.
It's the schools,
to enter into.
Right. Sorry.
It's
Right.
It's not ours.
Right.
Right. We have a different one. Right.
Does that information change anybody's
It
vote?
doesn't change mine.
No,
it's
Okay.
fine. I actually think I knew that. Yes.
All right. Sorry if I misspoke.
All right. Up to Article
Sorry,
20.
I'm just
OPEB?
catching up on making my notes. Okay, the OPEB trust fund appropriation. So my understanding of this article is that best practices dictate that we should be, we appropriate money into the OPEB trust fund, and the next one is we also appropriate or authorize the expenses of the trust fund, and this is something that came out of an audit recommendation that we should be doing this on an annual basis.
That we should take specific actions to appropriate into and take money out of.
Right. Okay. So these, one would hope, are headed for the consent calendar.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 20, the OPEB trust fund appropriation.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, similarly, I'm going to make a motion to vote affirmative action on Article 21, the OPEB trust fund expense.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And it must have been getting late
Stipends.
because
Retirement board
the
stipend.
retirement board stipend, I don't have a note.
I do. The finance committee voted affirmative, but it was 931. One abstention.
Yeah.
And this is for, I believe it's $4,000.
4,500, which, by
$4,500.
the way, I don't know. So my comment on this one, having researched it, was $4,500 is a lot, and the only thing that seems uniquely different to me from participating on a committee is that there's 18 hours of required training that has to be done. And if you associate the 4,500 to the 18 hours, that's $250 an hour. It's quite a bit of money
You train.
for training.
Mhm.
Many towns have a $3,000 limit. So the regulations allow between 3,000 and 4,500, but the recommendation is to vote for 4,500, which I think is a high amount.
Also, I think I heard that one of the people on the board is not a resident or a retiree. Is that right?
So all retirement boards have a fifth member, and the fifth member does not have to be a resident, but cannot be somebody who is a member of the retirement system. The town's fifth member is a resident who is a retired investment professional.
Oh.
I think since I have the microphone, if I could just take a minute. I think the presentation at public hearing focused a lot on recruitment for this position. And I really think the focus should have been on the fiduciary responsibility these individuals carry as members of the board managing a $250 million portfolio rather than the recruitment. It's just, it is different than other boards and committees because of that significant fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, can you explain that? Because, for example, we have here the finance committee, we have the select board, we have boards that are dealing with multi-million-dollar budgets, the school committee, but we have insurance, public officials, liability, and all. Doesn't the retirement board have some kind of protection?
So the difference is, I think, the role that this board is not involved in investing funds.
Correct.
You're not even asked about investment of funds. That's on the town side. That's with the treasurer.
Right.
So I think it's while you're involved in maybe similar things, your responsibility is different.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually deciding how to invest the
Yes,
funds.
they are. So,
They're managing the manager.
yes.
Well, they're managing the manager. So my question is, we have a manager,
Yeah,
right?
that's
who's
my
doing
point.
a lot of that
That's
financial
right.
management, just like the trustees have.
Yeah.
some, but
That's what I don't understand.
I went back and looked at the agendas, and I didn't see a whole lot of discussion around the investment decisions. It was more operational and sort of managing the retirees' expenses, et cetera. But
I'm
So-
not suggesting to support or not support.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I think it was unfortunate that the conversation really focused on recruitment when I
Yep.
think the issue is fiduciary responsibility.
Right.
But they do have some sort of protection with insurance, right?
I think they're bonded, right? And
Yeah, they are
that
bonded.
expense is covered by the retirement.
Right.
Retirement funds. Right.
But they did make the point that this is a relatively common practice for this particular type of board.
Yeah, I think it's like 71 out of 105 boards have it. And, many were at the 3,000 level, not the 4,500 level.
And wasn't it an up to? Or were we voting a specific amount?
I think it's 4,500
Yeah,
because they were asked at the
4,500.
public hearing. They said,
Right.
we want 4,500. It's the stipend.
Right.
I don't know if it's
Not more than.
Yeah, it's not more than, but in the meeting, somebody asked the question.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
I think their plan is.
Yeah,
if it
yeah,
gets
it's
approved,
4,500.
Their plan is.
right.
Yeah, not less than 3,000 and not more than 4,500. That's, I guess, what's written
That's
in
in
the law.
statute. Yeah.
So I guess if you have stipends, you have to pay 3,000.
You have to pay 3,000. Can't pay less.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just, from a taxpayer perspective, these funds, should they be paid out, are being paid out of the funds that are in the retirement program for the benefit of the retirees. So it has no effect on our taxes one way or the other.
Okay.
Okay.
What are people thinking? You ready to vote? Uh-oh.
I mean, I'm personally in favor of the stipends. I think that maybe this sounds like there's maybe some debate as to whether we want it to be the 4,500 or.
It just seems high to me, but I don't think it matters what we think, because I think 4,500 is the requested stipend.
Yeah. I'm reading the webpage, not the article, so I recognize it could be wrong, but it does say of not more than 4,500. So I think
Yeah, and that is what the article.
they do.
Yeah, it's just what the article
They do
says.
have the ability to potentially make it less.
Yeah, they could make
In the
it less.
meantime, I think that
We could vote in affirmative action and then, strongly support evaluating the stipend itself, given
Right.
public comment, etc.
yeah. I guess I'm willing to support this because I do think that it's a job. You want people to take it seriously, and it's certainly an important function to steward our retirement savings, which this is a great place to put in a commercial for the fact that our retirement plan is well funded.
It is very well funded. Yep, it's true.
Yeah.
I can make a motion. Are we ready for a
Thank you.
motion? All right, I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 22, the retirement board's stipend.
Second.
And further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Acceptance of the HEROES Act. This is an opportunity to potentially lower the tax burden on some of the most needy residents.
Other veterans. Yep, and the funding for this is in the overlay fund, but I think it's not significant. So,
Yeah, fully supportive.
yep.
Okay.
Same. So I make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 23, acceptance of the HERO Act.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is Article 24, is the transfer from the Middle School Stabilization Fund. We've talked about this $1 million. I'd be somewhat interested in hearing more about the actual plan for this. Considering the way the middle school is funded, there's a real cliff when you stop doing this. And I think it's in the past, when we did level principal, we had the opportunity to sort of shave a peak and then expect that we could kind of intersect at a lower level. Obviously, in the last couple of years, because the middle school's been under construction, the amounts have been going up. But I'm wondering what the taper is there, which doesn't mean I'm not supportive of this particular action. I just think that we're going to need to figure out how to wind this down. Because at some point, we're going to have to get used to paying the full cost of that
Well, my
30-year borrowing.
understanding is that
25
in
years.
29 and 30,
I might have it.
the Alcott and Thoreau schools come off the books, so there won't be a cliff. That this is going to fill the gap between now. Yeah. This is the
That's-
one that was-
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm referring to, that was in, I think that was in debt.
Right.
The debt
That's
article
excluded
right
debt.
here, is that
Yeah.
stabilization, right?
So there's a gap between now and 30.
Right.
And so that this stabilization fund, my understanding is it's going to cover those few years until we.
So
get
it's
to
going to
30.
get us out to 29.
Yeah. It's, right.
I have to wait a long time for the next count.
Right.
That's
Okay.
a policy maybe we should talk to about.
Yes.
Level principal
Thank you for bringing
versus level funded.
Okay.
Are we ready to take a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 24, transfer from middle school stabilization fund.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now the transfer of the Peabody School and appropriation of
We
funds.
already
We already
voted.
discussed this one tonight. And we voted affirmative action on it as part of
Already?
that discussion.
Oh, so Article 30, listen to April 14th, yeah.
Okay, 26 is the.
But we already voted affirmative action on that.
Oh,
and
right.
27. And
27.
we deferred 28. So 27 was remote participation.
Yeah.
The town meeting
Yep.
was voted affirmative action. Then
And we
Article-
did, okay, it's always there.
28, we decided we were going to defer that for, and I'm not recalling exactly why we decided to refer,
We just
Because-
weren't,
Confusion over exactly
how it works.
working and administrating.
So you know what? Actually, I think for if we were listening to Diane earlier, this Friday is the citizen petition
Yeah.
for the League of Women
Okay.
Voters. We should all plan to attend
All
that or
right.
listen to it. That would probably be very beneficial.
Okay, then I'll accept that idea.
Okay.
I will say that last year, the select board voted to support the ranked choice voting. It was either last
Just
year
a
or the
couple
year
years ago.
before.
Yep. And that's in
Okay.
the presentation too.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so
Um,
there's no motion for 29.
No motion for 29. 30, we already voted to
Did we?
recommend it
Yes.
The
first.
grant of easement?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh.
and that was the Verizon one at the new middle school.
31 we voted.
31 we did. 35, the citizen petition to protect the Orchard House. We were, I think,
Wait,
all.
we skipped 32.
Sorry.
32 betterment. We.
Okay, this was presented at the finance committee as well. This is the White Pond area.
This is that flooding.
Right.
And the funding would come out of
The residents.
the residents. We charge the betterment. So actually, we borrow the money and then they pay
They pay
back
us
that
back, yeah.
fund. It's a state program.
They.
Wasn't it?
Actually, they deferred. I have defer here
Okay.
for
Yeah.
finance.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that should hold as well. I think is still evolving.
Is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Mhm.
let's wait.
Yeah, because I don't have a note on the outcome of that, so I remember the discussion.
Do we want to vote to report at town meeting then?
Oh, yeah, that's probably good.
Well, or maybe we'll have more information. I don't know.
On Monday? If we don't have Monday by.
Yeah, I can look and see where we
Okay.
are.
Let's see.
Okay,
MCI Concord?
so that
That's going
that
to
has not been presented
that
yet.
hasn't
That's
been.
going to be presented on. I am hoping that we will find our way to supporting that. The new news there is that we have the prospects of any kind of new support from the state for FY26 are very good, virtually non-existent, and that has a lot to do with the fact that in the state budget process there are, on a normal year, there are about 900 requests for various appropriations from the state. This year, my understanding is about 1,600 were submitted. And so our legislators do not feel that we have much of a chance. So Article 33 is about providing some resources to continue the MCI planning. So I'll be presenting that on behalf of the advisory board on Thursday night.
And you have those workshops on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, that's where that was coming up in the chair's report, but
Okay.
thanks for mentioning it. That. All right. Stormwater Enterprise has not been presented yet. This is a petition for Orchard House. I skipped ahead to already. The band voted.
Wait a minute.
We voted to defer that, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
that goes in. Yeah, we're hoping they'll work something out.
Okay.
We said we were going to wait until 36th to May 5th for some reason. Yeah, okay.
Mary might be
Mary, I
liaison.
think Mary is liaison. Okay, and 37, the joint parking bylaw we had already approved.
We did? I don't
Uh-huh.
have that. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We haven't discussed any planning board.
We didn't do that? I'm sorry. And the notes in the packet are wrong. Yeah. Okay, so this was presented at the planning board hearing.
Yeah, there's a little confusion on how this was presented. So we have joint parking today in town. This article is going to expand that capability and refine it, make it a little smarter. So I'm fully in support of this. Okay. It is on planning board.
Well, I think I'm in support, but the presentation
I know,
needed, are they going to?
I followed up and just asked, is someone please gonna follow up? on that?
So they hopefully will.
Yes.
Because, all right. It's too bad this is the first planning board article.
Right, I know.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
I do too.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 37, the zoning bylaw amendment for joint parking bylaw.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and Article 38, the general housekeeping. These are commas and apostrophes and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yep, I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 38 for
Second.
general housekeeping.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 39, this is the accessory dwelling unit, aligning it with the state sizing now.
Yep, and then we actually increased it to 1,000
1,000 square feet.
because, and so there's no more special permit for that as well.
As long as it's that size.
Yeah, 1,000 under.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 39, the zoning bylaw amendment for the ADU bylaw.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 40. Okay, this is administrative essentially.
It's updating the maps. So I make a motion to vote affirmative action on Article 40, the floodplain conservative district bylaw.
Second.
Aye. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to sort that out.
I don't think we need to know all that in minutes. Keep it score anyway, Mark.
Okay, yep. Personal wireless communications district. This is the citizen petition presented by Henry Dane. We could
I'd like to defer this one.
wait and see whether Henry is able to clarify it anymore.
Is there any,
Wendy, what's your take on it?
well, only just because I guess legally, would it achieve what we want, what he's looking for?
Well, I think
mean,
he
my-
said it would be one step. It's not perfect, but
I know,
it's
I mean-
a step in the right
Yeah.
direction.
I just know if there's any,
Yeah.
I guess if legals looked at all these, more. Sure what our legal on that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to suss out what this was really trying to do, and I came away with the impression that this was basically saying that any place where you could put up a cell phone tower, you can apply to put up a cell phone tower.
If you justify it, it's gap.
Yeah. And I was concerned that the gap, that the burden
Significant.
of trying to figure out whether there's a significant gap and whether it would solve that significant gap was now essentially being transferred to the town. I'm sensing that Megan wants to say something.
Very perceptive. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that, not on that piece, but the first question, and this is something I could have sent out to you all, but I think about a week ago or a week and a half ago, Mary reached out to ask about the citizens petition, number 41. And wanted to know how the article could impact our efforts to improve cell service in Concord. And so, we did touch base with town council and with Carrie, of course. And so under the Federal Telecommunications Act and the town bylaw, there are avenues for the town to permit wireless facilities in areas outside of those identified on the personal wireless communications facility overlay district map. The citizens petition in town council's view makes that clearer and would affirm to carriers that town meeting understands this point.
mean, I'm in favor, but I think from my reading, it allows a bit more flexibility.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of how I read it too. I figured Stan must have.
Yeah, no, it's good to have. I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, glad you've
It's good.
asked about the.
That's great.
Sort of
Yeah,
also-
there have been discussions with before this was put forward and with town council, and so that's basically it.
All right. Ready for motion?
Yep.
All right. I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 41, the zoning bylaw amendment for personal wireless communication facility.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Sign
sign bylaw.
This was a pretty minor adjustment to the bylaw. I think it was sort of a correction to something, just some wording changes. So insignificant. I'll make a motion that we vote affirmative action on Article 42, general bylaw amendment, sign bylaw.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 43, the accessory retail in industrial zone.
Right, so this is going to allow, this is sort of like allows for retail sales of related items that might be manufactured on site. And it would solve a current issue. I think everyone's been in support of this from an EBT perspective. So I'll make a motion to vote affirmative action on Article 43, the accessory retail and industrial amendment.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the commercial parking.
This was another citizen, not citizen, but the sponsored by the Economic Vitality Committee, and it's their recommendation to sort of ease some of the business permitting processes, making it easier for business in town. So if there's no change in size, a change in use would not require new parking requirements. So I'll make a motion to vote affirmative action on Article 44, the zoning bylaw amendment for commercial parking.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'd like us to defer the next one, this Article 45. I didn't say so earlier. I think Mary, the New England Deaconess, is prepared to come on May 12th to have a little more discussion about this.
I think that's 46, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is. I've got my finger on the wrong one.
This is the
Sorry.
the PRD.
Yeah, the PRD. Okay,
bylaw.
so yeah, the PRD change was going to allow for change the criteria for the bonus amount to be not for affordable level of housing, but workforce level affordability.
Right.
So
this was
the
kind
idea of
raise
expanding the PRD desirability for commercial.
raise the AMI in the hope that people would then develop more.
Right.
Not just it.
Sorry, what?
So
Yeah, do you want to?
Trying to follow this one.
So Article 45. So we have existing planned residential development zoning rules, and you can build a more dense development if there's a certain percentage of your units that will be deemed affordable, and that affordable is the 80 AMI. And we haven't really had a lot of PRDs because a lot of developers are saying it doesn't really work financially as a developer. But the idea here is that if you change that criteria to be 80, change it from the 80% AMI to sort of work level affordability, so it would be under 150% AMI, you're more likely to get developers interested in supporting PRD developments. So it's a bonus criteria. So if you're going to put a development in, you can have higher density if you.
So the idea is to make a little bit more revenue available for developers to encourage them to
So they're incented to have a PRD development.
actually do this, as opposed to just say, well, I might develop it, but I'll never make my money back.
Right.
So it's really just changing. There's references to that 80% AMI affordability to changing it to be workforce level affordability is really in essence what it's doing. And it's really hard in this zoning.
And there was information presented that basically showed that we're not getting any housing at the levels that we have in the bylaw now.
No, I guess what you explained to me makes sense. I guess my confusion is I'm actually looking at what it says here. And it says to determine whether the town will amend zoning bylaw section to delete a category of affordable units that would
Right.
qualify for a density bonus.
But it should be replaced with different criteria. And actually, to be honest with you, I don't use it. I'll go online. I use the online one.
Yeah.
Does it really say that? Replace, just. Do you have
That's,
it?
sorry, that's why I was just trying to follow.
What article?
You know, he explained that at the presentation, but now I don't remember.
You know what, he
That's
does it really well in the presentation.
Yeah.
I just don't remember now what the explanation was.
Oh. Yeah, so it's striking out some.
Sorry, I know it's
No, I did.
No,
It's better in the presentation, to be honest.
It's a good question.
is there a way to defer this one to next?
Yeah, let's
Next week,
defer it.
just to
It's
be clear.
complicated.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's
I'm-
complicated, and
Just,
there was a good explanation, but I really don't remember it.
Yeah, and I don't have the slides.
Okay.
We do have
Right.
the slides.
let's,
Yeah, we need the
It's clear on the
slides.
let's defer it just to
Mhm.
be.
Okay. Yeah, this is this is the heaviest lift out of this one. Right?
46.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to defer 46 also.
And I think that we probably won't make the recommendation here until town meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So,
think it's-
do you want me to make a motion that we report at town meeting our position on Article 46?
Second. We can always change it, you
Yep.
know, if we get information or something.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we'll make our recommendation at town meeting for that.
CPC.
CPC appropriations. Recommendations.
Are any of these items controversial that anybody knows of?
No. And the finance committee voted affirmative action.
But sometimes the moderator will take one off if it's
I don't think
controversial.
so. I mean, you went to the hearing, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. So
Seems a lot more straightforward
just
than
quickly
other years.
is affordable housing trust money, regional housing services office, the Thoreau athletic fields, green space, Giroux recreation area. I think that's maybe the only one that we've gotten some
Feedback.
correspondence on. The preservation of modern structures. There are some folks that are concerned that, if your house was built in the 60s, is it really historic? But that's a matter of opinion, I think. This would just do a survey of that. I don't think it would go anywhere towards.
Policies on it.
And then preservation of assessors' records from the 18th century and staff support. And then some reserves for historic preservation.
Yeah, no, I'm fully in support of it.
I am, but since you mentioned that, Mark, Carrie, do you know after they do that survey of the historic properties, what are they going to do with the survey? Or Megan, if you know, or
I don't think so. I think it's just documentation.
I mean, are they going to attempt to make all house neighborhoods from the 1950s and 60s historic districts, or?
I don't think so. I think they're just recognizing that.
Yeah, I mean that's
The HDC started in 1960s. It's been a long time since.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That would have to go back to town meeting anyway. If they, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
this is just documented. Okay.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
Yep, I make a motion that we vote for action on Article 47, CPC, creation.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I think we're done, except for 57 and 58. Are we going to have motions on those?
Probably not.
Right.
57. Oh, good. Okay.
Okay.
Then we're done.
Okay. Are all enterprise funds that we'll be hearing about on Thursday night. Yeah. Great.
Wow, got a lot done. Good job, Mark.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Now we're at the chair's report. Thank you for that. That's a lot. Clearly, we didn't allocate enough time for that, but okay. I just wanted to acknowledge the thoughtfulness and encourage anyone who hasn't had a chance to read. I am not going to read the proclamations, but we did receive proclamations recognizing the Concord and the 250th celebration from the town of Concord, California, as well as the Concord Township in Lake County, Ohio, and the Tennessee House of Representatives. And so that was a particularly enjoyable part of the Patriots Day parade for me, was to see all the other Concord representatives.
Yeah, that was fun.
And, you know, what I noticed about this was that some of these communities were literally named after the events that occurred here. They were named Concord because of Concord. So we really extend our thanks and our friendship to those communities. I had a couple of other things by way of chair's report tonight. Just back to them. Oh yeah, so the Concord Middle School ribbon cutting was scheduled for May 3rd. That is being rescheduled. It has been postponed. There is not a date yet, so just if you were planning to attend that, keep your eye open for that. From Marion, and by way of the Concord Affordable Housing Trust, we're looking for a date for a new a housing roundtable to take place in May. Mary had mentioned she's available on the 8th, the 13th, the 14th, and the 21st. The idea is to coordinate this with the public outreach that's being done around MCI Concord to try to bring to the table those people with an interest in housing as part of the information exchange. There are some focused conversations that are taking place, as well as the open public sessions that have now been moved. I'll get to that. But if those,
So I don't, do you know what time? Like, do they do it early or late?
it's
I couldn't
usually
remember.
early-ish.
Usually like 5 o'clock.
It's usually about 90 minutes.
Yeah, 5 to 6.
So, because I have committee.
Yeah.
But I could, if it's 5, I can do the 8th, 13th, 14th. I'm okay. So that
I can do the 8th and 13th and 21st and some other dates that Mary didn't.
Okay. Do you have any? Yeah, I think I can make those. So why not? Yeah. 8th is a little difficult for me, but I like the 13th or the 14th, and that's kind of right in the heart of this too. So okay, we'll put forward those dates prior.
Do the 14th.
You can't do the 14th. All right, that's during the day. Okay.
So can everybody do that? Is the 8th and 13th? I'm a little bit, can you guys do it?
I'm most likely out of town, so I could participate remotely, but I can't be here in person. Thank you. Monday.
Well, we have
We have a meeting.
possible.
We have a possible. Okay. Yeah. So that's a possibility. Anybody that wants to have a select board meeting 3 Mondays in a row, 4 Mondays in a row. It's a house and round table. Okay. We'll offer those dates back and see what they come up with. So we get to sort of go first and then do whatever others. I heard you said maybe 13. Yeah. And the 14th.
What happened to the 8th?
That I can do that remotely, but not in person. So
Yeah.
it sounds. And how's everybody looking? So is the 19th our first choice? It's not just.
Okay.
All right. So the only question is that wasn't one of the dates in there.
Yeah, but what's the next preferred date?
Let's.
The next preferred date would be
Yeah. 19th, 8th, and 14th or 21st. Okay. I'll send that back. So I alluded to it a couple of times, but Wednesday is the first of the large public outreach sessions for MCI Concord. So we're really trying to hit the ground running on this, and we don't have a lot of time. So the idea is the agency will be running 2 workshops, one from 3 to 5, which, assuming the weather looks good, I think.
Yeah, it is.
It's going to be at Giroux Park, which I think is kind of an exciting idea, in the pavilion for people and for folks that can't make that time slot. There's also going to be at the Goodwin Farm. Nope.
The evenings at Harvey Wheeler.
Harvey Wheeler.
From
Thank you.
from 6 to 9.
6 to 9.
The Goodwin Farm is a backup for Giroux if it's raining, but the weather does look good.
So that'll be exciting. There'll be stations. This is a you don't have to stay for the whole thing. You can drop in, ask your questions, leave your input. And so please, with 5 hours on that day, hopefully everybody gets a chance to come in at some point. So. All right. The last thing I had by way of chair's reports is just wanted to acknowledge that I think this is the last meeting we're going to have. So Andrea's given another opportunity, and yeah. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any comments on the select board liaison reports?
I don't know liaison, but when we're going to consent, I have a proclamation that I think we should read.
Okay.
It's in the consent. This is the proclamation for the professional municipal clerks week. That's for May 4th, 10th. So, whereas professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of the local government, exists through the world, whereas the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among clerks. Whereas the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local government bodies, and agencies of government other than clerk. whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and rendering equal service to all, whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center and functions of local government and community, whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the town through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and town meetings, and whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishment of the town's professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, we do recognize the week of May 4th through May 10th, 2025, as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital service they perform under exemplary dedication.
You're good.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments around select board liaison reports?
Well, I just wanted to thank the Concord Executive Committee, the staff, Gary and Rob really put so much into it, and staff, and Fred Ryan, and Clark Booth with the ambassadors, and everybody. It was amazing. I was so proud to be the Concord that day. It was really great. I don't think this is it was amazing.
Great all around.
Absolutely. Job really well done. Yeah. Be in order. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.